see.
Means you can't see anyone.
So good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on time. You get the biscuit for being here on time. As a result, you're going to get some really useful, really practical advice from this panel. Can you tell the intellectual horsepower here? How about a whoa, yeah? Can you sense the intellectual horsepower here? Thank you for that spontaneous outburst of enthusiasm. But we seriously have got three really great practitioners in this discipline, and they're going to share what's actually worked and not worked on how to actually drive the MACH agenda. Quick show of hands. Is it MACH or is it Mark? MACH? Mark?
Ooh,
the Macs have it.
Got it.
Right here. Let me invite them each to introduce themselves, tell us a bit about their background, and then what we'll do is we'll actually go in sequence, asking each of these excellent practitioners to go into detail around a particular area they want to share with you. If there's any questions you've got around what you're hearing, put your hand up. We've got mics and we'll get to you, but it's a very practical, very interactive session. I want you to walk away with stuff you can actually use. Is that going to be good? Thank you for that spontaneous agreement. All right, let's kick things off. We've got Claire, Danielle, and Matt. Going to invite them in that order to tell us a bit about themselves. So Claire, kick us off. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi everybody, I'm Claire Donald. I'm Scottish if you can't tell, so if anyone's struggling a wee bit with my accent, please let me know, but I'll try my best to speak slow. So I'm the VP of Technology and Digital Product at Moo.com. We're an online design and print company, and we have our own manufacturing facilities, so more than just your bog standard e-commerce company. And I lead a team of around 80 to 90 people. We ebb and flow. Everything from data, IT, right the way through all of our e-commerce and fulfillment and shipping solutions.
Not too shabby. And based where? Where's home for you?
So I'm personally based in Weybridge in Surrey. Moo has offices in Camden in London, Boston in Massachusetts, Providence in Rhode Island, and Denver in Colorado.
All right.
And I've been there 5 years.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for making time today. Danielle, tell us a bit about your journey to MACH.
Well, first of all, I am a Moo client, and I get compliments on my very great business cards always. But I'm also the CEO and co-founder of Sensation, which is a direct-to-consumer digital e-commerce platform for the wine industry. And I am a MACH advisor on the board, as well as I've been an ambassador since the founding of MACH.
Thanks. And home for you is?
Oh, I'm from the US, so I flew in from California for this.
Well, good to see you. Thanks for making the journey. So tell us a bit about your journey, MACH.
So I'm sort of the outlier in this panel because I represent the kind of agency side. So I've got 20 odd years of being a kind of CTO or tech director in global agency organizations. So in WP, PCAMS, Valtech out there, my old crew. So in kind of senior global CTO type roles. And my kind of introduction to the MACH Alliance actually was while I was with Valtech. I was actually on the founding tech council of the MACH Alliance, and then more recently become more of an ambassador type role. So that's why I'm here today.
Cool. And let me finish the sequence. So my name is David Hicks. I'm the founder and chair of a business called XM Coach, which is now to do with MACH, except what I'm sure you'll hear is this is a bit about technology, but it's a lot about leadership. It's a lot about actually leading the organization to square up to and make the right choices. And that's an area of particular expertise for my business, xmcoach.com. So thank you for making time for this and also for the preparation sessions. Are you ready for the deep dive? Yes, thank you. Come to the front, boo-rah. So Claire, you wanted to share a particular area of interest in terms of MACH.
Yeah, I wanted to delve into one of the main reasons why we chose to go down this path for at Moo.com. So Moo's 17 years old, so not a tiny little startup, but we're not scaled enterprise either. And our technology has grown and evolved along the way as well. And some of our existing tech stack started off with our tiny little mini cards. Some of our data flows and structures are all based around that as well. And it also means that we've got quite a lot of old technology in there. And things that we had to buy that didn't exist on the marketplace 17 years ago, we're been attempting to refactor, and they're now commodity in the marketplace. So one of the key drivers for us to move towards this approach was to start buying things that other people were specialists in. And there are tons and tons of cloud-native SaaS providers, which is the C in MACH, that specialize in different components, which 17 years ago we had to build. So as we were thinking about how we evolve Moo to tackle our next set of expansion with new products and targeting different customers, we didn't want to put too much energy into refactoring or rebuilding things that we can buy in the marketplace right now. And that was a real key driver for us. I've got a team of 80 to 90 people, and I want to target that energy and that expertise and at things that are unique and bespoke to Moo's business model, which for us is our design experience. We don't need to build our own PEM or DAM or checkout. There are plenty other companies out there that are specialising just in that space. So that was a primary driver to send us down that path. There was quite a lot of explanation that I had to do with my wider leadership team on just what that meant. For some of my peer group in the executive team, they hear buy something and you assume, you just pay for the license and turn it on. It's all going to work, Claire, isn't it? Like, can we have this next month type thing? So there's a bit of explaining to people from my part of building an API-based platform means just that. You have to define clean interfaces and different services to connect together. And the key parts that my team would be doing would be how we orchestrate it all together, integrate things together in a modular way. So as the company evolves and they have different needs and different wants of me, I've built a very flexible platform that will allow us to adapt to those needs. So just picking up on what you said on the leadership aspect being quite an important part of this as well. It's not all about the technology.
So there was at least two really good gems there. One is Claire saying, part of my role is to actually educate leaders historically, but probably going into the future. But there's also another gem. We actually needed to work differently. Did you catch that? To actually encourage the business to work in a cross-business way. Folks, what's your reaction to Claire's point? Were there any things you wanted to maybe dive a little deeper, ask questions or queries?
I'm going to build on that in just a minute because the Sensation story really lends itself to that methodology as well.
I'd probably just ask the question, and I kind of know the answer because we've spoken a little bit about it, but at what point did you get to a stage where you knew that your leadership team were on board with the kind of modular way of working?
Great question.
Yeah, when I told them I was going to give them a Ferrari, and they were used to driving a moped, like that's when their eyes really lit up. And when I explained to them how our existing estate was holding us back, and particularly around this ability to be more modular and change things in and out over time. Like we have 2 monoliths, never mind 1, so our rate of change is quite slow, and it's been quite difficult for us to introduce new products into our range due to that speed of change. So them knowing that we could quickly launch products, and I'd be able to give them all of the better data and marketing tools in order to do that. There was easy and quick buy-in. Nice. But again, that's a business KPI, not a technical one.
Exactly. Danielle, any things you want to build on there or query?
Well, first of all, I'm going to now start calling Sensation the Ferraris of wine marketplaces. That's a great way to put it. But my background is in investments and specifically in technology organizations. So prior to Sensation, I'd spent a lot of time looking at and investing in major transformations. So the first was for a major investment company and an accounting firm. And we put in a new accounting and trading system. I've done that 3 times, which is a beast to do because you can't miss a beat, and normally it's not very successful. I've also helped move a handful of businesses from kind of legacy technology to the cloud. So when you think about MACH, which is microservices, API-led, cloud native, and headless, each of those things is really, really critical. And I think Sensation is becoming a huge success story in terms of agility and innovation because our entire business is founded on MACH principles. That's by design. All of our team members have been involved in technology for a number of years, and the founding team really thought about these principles when we built the business. So we're only 2 years old, which is why most of you have never actually heard of us, but we've partnered with a lot of names that you may have heard of. And I think what's really interesting is under 2 years, we concepted the idea, we brought it to market, and we're now in 8 countries doing a global e-commerce marketplace. And we actually partner with wine producers that don't have the same distribution of a lot of the companies that you find on store shelves. Now in the US and in the States, it's a really prominent difference. In Europe, it's a little bit different because old world wine has been around a lot longer. So some of the norms and really specifically some of the rules and regulations haven't been the same. Where this becomes really important for MACH and for technology is that when we think about speed to market and really trying to control the category, one of the things that I'm constantly doing with my team is thinking about modularity, thinking about the trade-offs, right? We want to boil the ocean, we want to do so many things, but we have to really roll out our roadmap in a way that's going to serve our clients and our business partners. So one of the things that I'm really focused on right now and that I'm battling with my CTO all the time is build versus buy. And specifically, I mean, if you look out on the trade floor, there's so many services out there. So when we think about microservices, for me, that's just near and dear to my heart, and coming from the investment world, I'm constantly thinking about it and analyzing it. And I think one of the most interesting trade-offs, and where this is very different than legacy and ERPs and a lot of things, is that the decision doesn't have to be forever. It doesn't have to be final. We make a lot of decisions to partner with different service providers, at least in the short term, to get to market a lot faster. And then I think most of the time we recognize that they go way deeper than we can, and it's much better to actually partner with them. So when we started Sensation, we had a single provider, and that was in our headless space. That was our CMS. And we've since moved to 5 service provider, 3 of them being microservices. By the end of this year, I'll probably have 8. And a lot of times it's because our engineering team gets down and dirty. They very quickly get through a couple of sprints and say, this is probably going to take us 4 to 6 months. So we say, well, let's see if there's a great provider out there because we can integrate in 2 weeks. So I think some of the areas that we've seen really great success is in search functionality, is in promos. My team spent a lot of time on promos and loyalty programs, and just now we're deciding to go with a partner that I picked about 1.5 years ago, right? So it's one of those things where you learn along the way, but I think every business is really different, and the trade-offs there are different from every company. And one of the things that I think MACH does, I've been saying MACH, but I'm going to switch to MACH. One of the things that MACH does really well is not only vet each of these companies, so that way you're kind of already a leg up against the competition of knowing that their technology is going to be future-proof, but also it's not meant to be a one-size-fits-all. There's competitors that are also friendly, so you can make decisions for yourself. And so far, we've seen really, really great success for that, and also our margins and our ROI on when we build versus when we buy are really optimized. So I'm excited to keep going down that route and see where we end up.
Cool. So we've now got sort of a compare and contrast type set of conversations. Any questions from the floor on what you've heard so far? Because I want to actually maybe noodle a little on each. You mentioned earlier, if I heard you right, Claire, about getting leadership buy-in is key to this. But then there's leadership buy-in, folks saying, yes, we agree to these changes that we need to make. But then folks have got to do some of the things that Danielle was saying, which is actually make some trade-offs on some of this stuff. So how do you keep the conversation focused on the right stuff to enable sort of MACH going forwards? How do you actually get leadership to ensure that they really do understand this is what it means we're going to be doing this, not this, so you can actually make the right choices?
Yeah, it's a tough balance. And for me, there's 2 parts to it. And it's understanding your business metrics and your KPIs and what the business is trying to achieve and their strategy, so you can link whatever you're trying to do with technology to that. And then the other part is money. Like the key to some of these transformations is being on the same page with your CFO and understand your budget, so you can base all your plans around this. And certainly at Moo, we've paced ourselves in doing some of these transitions. I've sat in other talks like this where there's been companies went to big SI and spent tens of millions of pounds. And, yeah, we've done it in 9 months. We're an SME. I like to think we're from the more realistic, normal side of life, where you've got to chip away at this and figure out how you can create increments of capability that are helping your business progress as you go along, which often can mean that you're spending money before you come back up again. So being really transparent on some of the costs that you think this is going to bring along the way is really, really important. But tying them back to how you're going to enable a different business metric in a future year, or hopefully in the same year, has been quite key to me debating and adjusting with my peer group.
To catch that, linking these key capabilities that MACH enables to key performance indicators. That sounds like a smart thing to do. Frankly, if you're not anchoring stuff back into your key business goals, then you've got to question whether you can keep your foot to the floor on this stuff. You've heard these two sort of views, one around actually convincing an organization to get cracking on this, one actually using it to stay agile and move quickly. What's your view, Matt, in terms of what you've been hearing? Any questions or queries of either builds?
So I think in terms of Danielle's context, I think this is a really fortunate situation that you're in, because it sounds like the whole of your team were born out of that mindset of, so we have this cliche term in agency land, like flexibility as a strategy. So we talk about kind of using MACH principles to build in business flexibility, operational flexibility, and tech flexibility. So it sounds like that was kind of at the heart and soul of your business anyway. So in a way, you could sort of say you had a slight sort of advantage over some of the other businesses because you had that as a kind of core. In my role, I tend to spend a lot of time in kind of C-suite boardrooms, sat alongside somebody like Claire, saying, this is why we think you should move to this technology. So in agency land, what you're typically doing is trying to convince the C-suites. So you get somebody like, you've got Claire's back, you know her, she's been in your business a long time, she knows what you need. And then the agency role is to try and find the right kind of vendors that fit into that. So the whole buy versus build thing feels like it's a lot more backed up by the vendors that are going to be able to provide proof of concepts. The interesting thing I'd pick up on the costing, I'd say that's the one that if I think, and I don't want to do, I know I'm a big fan of agencies obviously, but one of the disservices that agencies do is they almost, they choose a solution a bit too quickly. So they've already got a sort of set of solutions. So depending on which agency you're in, they'll have a predetermined set of solutions. And unfortunately, when you get to the costing conversation, there does tend to be a little bit of friction there where you move from, say, CapEx costing to OpEx costing, or you move to consumption-based pricing, and you've got an agency trying to figure out that costing. So what that does is that puts a lot of pressure on the people in the businesses to say, I don't actually know how to approach my finance lead so that they'll be able to cost this solution up because it's consumption based. I don't know. It's going to cost you X amount per X hits per month. And that tends to cause a lot of friction before you get the buy-in. So that seems to be the sort of trip. It's the educational round, it's the group buy-in, but then there is also that, unfortunately, and I'm a techie, right? So I don't want to have finance conversations, but they're inevitable.
So I want to come to Danielle in a sec, but let's stick with Claire's story just for a minute longer. You were saying I promised them a Ferrari, right? But it sounds a bit like, yes, but we're going to need to spend money on this Ferrari, but we can't actually drive it just yet until we've done all of the things in support of it. So how do you build that sort of case for change that Matt was saying? How do you get your CFO, the sort of finance investment appraisal folks, to actually understand the trade-offs, the complexities of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's easier when you've already got a blocker in your business, which is where we were. Like, technology was not able to enable what the business needed. So, like, we were already on a burning platform, arguably, which made it easier. But yeah, I mean, I still have to be transparent and open with the costs. And like building upon what Matt was saying, I've experienced the same issues with license costs and people and agency costs. You've had to tackle both of them. And I've worked with assumptions, certainly on the financial side with licenses. And one of the tricky things of working with SaaS suppliers when you go to negotiate a contract, Like they want you to sign up to the 3-year contract, pay it all up front. So, you know, they want certainty in your demand and your usage. And if you're just going through a proof of concept or an experiment, like you can't give them what they want, and you end up in a bit of a negotiation. So I mean, I've went into, similar to what I think Danielle was saying, my first sort of vendors and SaaS providers that I'm working with into 1-year contracts. So we can check that we're the right fit, check that it's all working well, and that gives a little bit more certainty to the CFO that, you know, if things aren't going well, we've got a back out plan. You know, I'm not overcommitting to something that I'm uncertain with. Just wanted to build upon what you're saying about the agencies and, you know, working with different types of people. That's another challenge that I've had to figure out as well. You know, I have a reasonably sized team and I have engineers in my own team, but they lack expertise in some of these places, and we need to do more stuff faster. And we've tried different methods throughout the last couple of years of trying to find people with this expertise to join us permanently. I'll tell you right now, the pool is about this big. Working, you know, approaching SIs and trying to see if we could make something work. But they were out of reach and too expensive for us. And the method that's worked best for us is working with smaller, more boutique agencies that are more niche, and they've been embedding themselves and augmenting our team that way, and that's worked really, really well. And again, I'm sort of just containerizing. I'm sort of using MACH principles for my resources, containerizing my people and my financial costs to provide some back out plans should it not go well. Sounds like you were doing similar, Danielle.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've learned along the way, having done this 3 or 4 times now, is that the trade-offs are real, right? You can focus on speed, and with that, you probably lose some organization because you have people kind of all over doing things, and you have to regroup often. You can try to do everything in-house. You can try to rely on agencies, and there's trade-offs with that. I think when you're doing a transformation or even building a net new company, if you are creating a tech stack that is built for the future and it's not a one-size-fits-all or it's not in one place, that puts a bigger burden on the people that are managing it, right? Because when you have a single vendor, a single set of stakeholders, things like that, it's kind of boxed in one room. But when you start to build something that's much more modular and you start to rely on more vendors, more partners, potentially an agency, then you have to manage all of those people, right? And sometimes that's easier, sometimes it's not. I try to think about it in the sense of I'm front-loading the work, right? Think about when you automate something versus when it's manual. If you automate something, you have to understand the logic, you have to understand all of the considerations. But if you map that out well, then you set it up once, and you maybe have some tweaks along the way, but you've really invested in that, and then you get much more scalability and something that's a lot simpler. I think that's the same thing when you think about some of this stuff. You have to map out the building blocks, think about the architecture, understand what the trade-offs are. But then if you have a blueprint and a roadmap, then all of a sudden you start to see the ROI come to life, and that really helps with stakeholders and finance. But I think helping people understand that is way easier said than done. I'm up here like, oh, it's really easy, but we all know that that's not the case, because it could take 3 months to even think through and map out all of that stuff. And selecting vendors and working with agencies is you know, something that we all have to do. One of the things with agencies that I've learned is you sometimes just have to follow your gut with them. You know, there's been times where I have a really strong agency and things are working really great, then all of a sudden they're pushing something new on me, and I have to decide if I'm going to trust them or if I'm not. And a lot of times for me, that comes down to the gut, because if they know it really well and my team has to learn it, that's a trade-off there, right? But if I don't want to have to learn it and be dependent on them, then we have to go in another direction. And I've had wins and losses with that. One of the biggest wins that I've had was related to our CMS, and then a bigger learning curve, but also an area that I think was the right choice to trust our gut and follow the agency because they did know the space better than we do, was with our email marketing capabilities. So we actually decoupled our CRM and our email marketing, which is, a risk, because now all of a sudden you have to really have smart data architecture internally and be relying on two different vendors that are actually huge competitors. So we have to take that in and manage that all of ourselves. And there have been some challenges, and there's been days that I'm swearing and pulling my hair out, but also I think it's going to be better for the business in the long run. And it's not something that everyone wants to go to, right? I think a lot of people jump right into Salesforce because it's one size fits all, and then other people want to take it in and do it their own way. And like I said, there's really just trade-offs to each.
So you've got two colleagues here nodding. Does that sound familiar to you guys, Matt? Why are you smiling at this?
The bit that sort of makes me laugh is the bit you said to start with, actually, which is this idea that you can sort of suck it and see. You can try something for a little while. You can say, well, actually, this is a product we can get to market quicker with, and then in 8 months' time, if it's not working, we know that we've got the architecture to swap it out. So that simultaneously gives me hope for everybody, but also gives me the fear, because I've been in rooms with, if you take the C-suites of like global pharma and global car companies, that idea to them is so ingrained as a bad idea that it would just be such a fight. I would never win that kind of argument. And I would say it is probably more of the really big organizations, but it's definitely more the mentality of, yeah, but we can probably de-risk this by just putting 3 logos on as opposed to 5. And that seems to be something that we're still fighting now. That's probably the only bit that makes me go, gives me anxiety.
That we've all talked a little bit on this modularity idea and swapping things in and out. Have either of you actually done it yet? Done one? Like
but for smaller.
You've swapped a supplier, right?
Yeah.
Tell me.
So we've done it a few times in different organizations. So across my last kind of 2 agencies, we've done it a few times where, and weirdly, the CMS is a common example. So CMS and e-commerce behind the scenes, it's very common that that's not working for us, or we need to scale, or we need to move to the next platform. One of the things that, and if I'm just going to take a hit for agency land for a second, one of the things that agency land has done pretty badly is they've gone, you can, if you don't like that headless CMS, you can swap it out for a different headless CMS. And then all the techies in the room go, oh God, that's not true, right? So there's an API and orchestration piece to kind of sort out. I think where you two both have a real advantage is your internal strong understanding of the technology. A lot of organizations don't have people who understand the implication of swapping things out. If you understand the implication, then you can plan and you can swap things out. But it's not, I love Mac and I love the Mac Alliance, but it's not as magic as I think a lot of people think you can plug and play things.
Oh, it's painful, right? I've been part of a $25 million transformation that's failed.
Yeah.
And it's typically because organizations' leaderships are not willing to invest up front and understand that it really is front-loaded, because they want to see results very quickly, and you just don't. That's why I really simplify the example of manual stuff versus automation, or sending an email to 50 people versus setting up an email to 50 people, because that makes it impossible to argue. I don't think anyone could argue that one person sending 50 emails is going to take less time than a system sending 50 emails and configuring it, right? So you start with little nuggets of things that become very hard to argue, so then you get a little bit more airtime to be able to make your case, because it is an argument at the end of the day, right? It's debating, and it's people deciding what's what, and the hierarchy of very large organizations to some extent really hinder an equal debate, and that is what the technology world is kind of up against in major mature organizations. And I think a lot of times it's because the stakeholders or the leadership look into how much you've invested already in the disruption of that, but then also the disruption of their world as
Yeah.
well. So when you can really start to decouple it and give these little nuggets of very simple things, it helps make the complex stuff a little bit more digestible. Because I agree, it's definitely not magic, even though it's fun to talk about it like it is.
But just one real quick thing to pick up on. So everybody's got a kind of case study of moving. So we moved this, and I'm sorry to say, a $16 million website, which is just a $16 million website, which is on a monolith, and then over a number of years moved it to a Mac-based infrastructure. Everybody agreed it was better. And the original site, as I say, $16 million, which is an eye-watering amount of money for any website. And we moved the whole thing, and everybody was really pleased it was a success, except for the leadership team, because they went, I have no discernible difference in my business. So from their point of view, all the tech guys, all the creative guys, all the content editors, they're all amazingly happy, but everybody in the business leadership team of that car organization, nearly said who it was, they were very unhappy because they didn't see any return on investment.
So we're 15 minutes before we get to close. Is this useful, folks? I mean, the actual practical scars and stars that you're hearing. Are there any questions from what you've heard so far? I want to ask some really awkward questions, but we've got a buddy in the front here. We've got a mic on its way to you shortly. As you pick up the mic, tell us who you are, where you're from, and then please ask us your question. Over to you.
Hi, Stuart from the charity WWF. So my question's around the kind of, I guess, buy-in and microservices modular approach. You've kind of touched on it already, but how do you manage potential vendor lock-in and also technical debt? Say you're going from a monolith or a couple monoliths to 15 suppliers. How do you improve, or how do you manage that potential risk?
I think your organization has had some big successful wins, right? You might not know that, but the answer is yes, because I was a judge for MACH Innovation Awards this year, and they were a finalist. So there's
the Australian colleagues.
Yeah, there's been a lot of really good work there. But I think in terms of, this is actually going on what Matt said, I think there's a burden now on marketers, technologists, and others to actually understand more than their specific area, right? So subject matter expertise is extremely important, but also understanding, I call it vantage points. I talk about that a lot in my organization. The vantage points of other team members is really important. So I come from the CFO world, but I also have studied technology and know it very well. So I can actually go in and help create APIs with my CTO. That's a little bit of an anomaly, but I learned that so that I could be in this position. I think that's really important for engineers, for team leads, for marketers to understand other aspects of the business so you can talk about it. And technical debt is, I think, a big one, because non-technology people, when they hear of technical debt, kind of make up their own definition, and a lot of times it just has to do with the numbers, and it could be a whole lot of things. So I think defining that stuff in any organization is really important, but then it's also the burden on us as individual professionals to understand others' vantage points, so that way you can actually have roundtable conversations and not really think in a silo. Because technical debt, in my mind, is when you spend money and you actually don't understand the implication of it. And more times than not, you can't register technical debt or even account for it or decide what it is for years down the road. So when you're making real-time discussions, talking about it might not make a difference. Otherwise, you really have to assess it. And so it's dependent on each organization. I'd kind of love to hear Matt's perspective on that.
Do you want to go? So just on the technical debt point, the kind of common thing to do is to lump everything into one technical debt bucket. But one of the things you can do really early on is you can split out what's actual technical debt, as in technology built badly that's holding you back. The other is to look at, is that being lumped in with your backlog of all the things that you'd like to get done? They're different things. I think the other one is then looking at anything that's holding you back in the roadmap. So that might be something that's considered technical debt now, but if it's something that's holding your business back, that goes straight to the top of the pile. Yeah. So and it's kind of good because of the lenses in which you look at it. is how you would assess it and say, well, actually, let's not consider that technical debt anymore. The other thing, just to the retrospective point of view, everybody who talks about technical debt in an organization is retrospectively looking at what it cost them. At the time you're looking at it, you could change the terminology and add it to the backlog, and it's no longer technical debt. So if you classify technical debt as anything that's holding your business back or anything that you can classify as bad code, then you can kind of put it into a smaller, and you'll find that the pot of money around that is much smaller. And it's that thing when people say, oh, we had 50 million of technical debt, but that's only because at the end of the year they put all the backlog items, all the things that didn't get done, and anything they couldn't figure out because the coder left, all in the same pot. Just really quick.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yep.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one thing to that. So one of the things that I also include in technical debt is labor costs.
Yeah.
Because the amount of time that you could be saving by eliminating some of the stuff that Matt is talking about is an enormous amount of money that a lot of people never take into consideration. And that is actually forward-looking, not back-looking, for the most part, the way I calculate or define it. Others might say it's also the time that's been spent of hours wasted. But when you start to look at labor considerations as well and how you can optimize in the future cost savings, it really changes the calculation, if you will.
So, did you want to add
Yeah,
anything?
I can throw in a different lens or perspective to this, I suppose. And it's, how you, even using the word tech debt, I tend not to use it. Like you were talking about vendor lock-in, and if we link this back to some of the plug-and-play things that we were talking about, you make a very conscious choice at the start on whether you're going to buy a more traditional platform that is, does multiple things, and that's a perfectly valid use case. Like knowing your business complexity, there's no issue with going off and buying a non-MACH type architecture and getting a platform that does the things that your business needs to do. And if that's one end of the spectrum, the complete other end is breaking it down into all the composable parts, because your business needs that complexity. And there's something in your business model that needs you to break it all down. And I have that in my business. We looked at the platforms, and we knew that the things that we were trying to achieve from a B2B perspective, you couldn't just buy. If you could, we would be out of business. So we were needed to, for business reasons, break it down further. So if you're already making that differentiation to go down the composable route, if you reframe when we swap something out, they're being tech debt to, actually, my engineering team, part of their job is to join things together, to integrate it all together, to be the orchestration, to understand the business logic. That's special to our organization. My permanent members of staff are that core nucleus, and they're there to adapt to whatever the business needs, be it a vendor that now costs too much when the renewal comes through, or we now want a mobile app. Like that's a positive thing rather than a negative. The word technical debt comes with a negative connotation, so I try not to use it.
So in terms of joining things together, Matt's job is to actually share one of his key learnings and try and pull together some of the themes that you've heard from your two colleagues. So what's been your key learning from this discipline, Matt?
So I think I'll work backwards from this one, because I think this is a really important one. So thank you for the question. I think if more organizations went down Claire's route and said our nucleus is going to be the orchestration of those composable architectures, the conversation around technical debt becomes much lower. And one of the reasons for that is, everybody's seen that MarTech. I mean, I don't know how many times it's been presented this time, but there's 11,500 logos on that MarTech diagram now, right? So you've got a fair amount of choice. So you don't have to put all of your eggs in one CMS basket anymore, which means if you own the orchestration, then you can limit the impact of any vendor lock-in. And to be honest with you, if vendors are talking about lock-in these days, they're probably off the table. The other thing that does is it gives your team the mindset of that flexibility as a strategy, so that as you come up for renewals of things, your team is not going, oh, well, we're on a 5-year lock-in, so don't look at it. They're saying, is there a better way? And in 6 months' time, there'll probably be a better way. Final thing, just on the one layer above, because I think we all said it to start with, is if when you're starting these conversations, and I think you two are quite lucky in that your organizations back you, but in a lot of organizations, you've got people who are really high up in CTO, CIO, and kind of technical lead positions that feel like the business doesn't really understand. So the best successes that we've seen with the MACH Alliance crew and some of the bigger organizations is when everybody buys into what you're trying to do, and that's not then putting yourselves in a silo the second you choose a consultancy or choose a platform or choose an agency.
Can I just, so I'm not the expert here, right? My role is to try and distill the expertise that's on the stage here. And what I'm hearing is, yes, you can have this agility, this ability to actually use best-in-breed applications wherever you need them, but it puts an awful load on leaders like yourself to educate, to coordinate, to orchestrate. That's a really significant increase in the sort of leadership capabilities. You've got to have really good collaboration skills. You've got to have really good skills in a whole range of areas that you might not have had before. Am I not playing to the audience, but is that actually something that you feel and you see? It actually requires a higher caliber dialogue, a higher caliber set of abilities to actually lead this agenda?
Yeah, I mean, this was going to be one thing that I was going to say be my biggest learning from our MACH journey. It can be very appealing to be like, oh yeah, we'll just have one of these, one of them, and bish bash bosh, it'll be done in a few months' time. That's not reality. It can take quite a long time to compose your architecture and figure out where you want to go. And it puts a huge strain on my role to get the buy-in. I think my company it's not luck because I guess they hired me. Over the years, I've become a more well-rounded generalist business leader rather than a deep technologist. I got people in my team that are way smarter than me than doing the tech. So I'm well placed to do that, and it's a big part of my role. Really understanding what the business is trying to do, and assessing the landscape as to how the technology landscape is evolving to do it, and then getting buy-in from my peers is a bigger part of my job than anything else.
You're an embodiment of that, Danielle. You started your career over here as a CPA and so on, and you've actually added an understanding of technology to that. Do you sense it's actually going to increase that sort of leadership capabilities you'll need to have to be able to lead this agenda effectively?
Yeah, I think if you take MACH and technology out of it as a whole, just think about your personal life, right? I think most of us in this room are old enough to remember flip phones and Blackberries and a different world, right? Like when I started my career, I didn't have email on my phone. And now it's like unfathomable to not be connected nearly 24/7. And when you think about, when you just think about professionals globally, people entering the workforce, they don't have that experience. From the time they were very young, technology is embedded in everything they do, so they just live and work differently. One of the things that Claire said earlier was that the hiring pool is like this right now, and that's really true, but even when the hiring pool is wide open, which it hasn't been for a while, finding professionals that kind of have this hybrid set of skill sets or intersections of tech and business or tech and marketing or other things, it's challenging, and it definitely does put the burden on the team to be able to figure that out. I call them unicorns. We're always looking for unicorns, the people that bring together 2 or 3 different skill sets. And I'm always trying to hire people that are smarter than me and find the unicorns. And it's not easy, right? Our hiring cycle is now months long, which is very, very, very painful. But the trade-offs for me on not having those unicorns is kind of what we consider the legacy way of doing the world. And a lot of the folks that Matt was talking about who are sitting in boardrooms and C-suites, they were in the second half of their career when email started coming to their phone and things like that. And they use some of it, but don't necessarily think or probably even need to care about where the world is going. And my focus is where we're going 5, 10, 20 years from now. And so I think that needs to be part of the dialogue in your organization with who are you talking to, what are the goals? Because if you're just talking to a blank wall, you're probably wasting your time. But figuring out how to have that dialogue, I think, is really valuable in what everyone's individual goals are.
So we're on the home stretch. I'm going to invite each of the folks on the stage to share just one line, one key practical takeaway that they'd recommend you you keep in mind. But I've got just one on your point, Danielle, about unicorns. I found leaders like yourself having a lot of success looking inside the organization, where folks have got that sort of organizational understanding from maybe 2 or 3 different functions. They're the folks you can maybe train into being unicorns. Look inside the organizations for folks with maybe organization agility. That's a good place to start if you're looking for those folks. Going to start in the same order. One line from you, Claire. What's the key practical thing for folks to take away to lead this agenda in their organization?
Understand what you're getting yourself into. Like going down this MACH route is quite complex, and make sure you've got a strategy for resourcing it, whatever is appropriate for your organisation. It's not clicking, it's done.
Understand the strategy. Matt?
Following on from that, I would say that have a mechanism within your project to at every point understand if you are falling into an inevitable silo, be it through team diversity or platform choice.
And
Drink
finally?
wine. No, I'm just kidding. I think the biggest thing is don't do it alone. Have a cross-disciplinary team that's thinking about this stuff together and really think about the different vantage points and try to take others' views in consideration.
Great practical points. This is not rocket science, but it's not easy. And if you want to continue this conversation with leaders like yourselves, leaders like those on the table, check out the WWXM Coach site, where we facilitate that sort of conversation and learning from what's worked elsewhere. Thank you to the panel. Thank you for investing in this session. Hope it's been useful. I'm sure you want to show your appreciation with a rousing round of applause. So thank you.
Thanks.